Great. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kayvon Izadi. I am the head of Impact for Breakfast, and I'm inspired to be introducing a session entitled A Billion Customers Untapped, Investing in Disability and Assistive Tech Innovation. We have now at Impact for Breakfast hosted over 650 sessions. These are in-person and global virtual sessions all around the world. And we've never covered the disability issue and the opportunity. So we're really thrilled to be presenting this session to you with our colleagues and friends from around the world. And I would like to give you a little bit of background on the IFB, Impact for Breakfast, first, and we'll get started. So we're a decentralized network of approximately coming close to 50 chapters around the world. We have almost 6,000 members, and we were established about 18 years ago. We just keep growing and growing, and it's because of your interest. It's because of the interest of on the issues that we are covering and the networking opportunities that this sort of decentralized network provides. There's very low barrier to entry. There's no high conference fees. There's nothing like that. We're just really convening people where we're saying, here's an issue and an opportunity, and we're assembling it with the resources necessary, hopefully, to mobilize that opportunity into a real sustainable solution. This is not a pitching session. We're not here to talk about our widgets and get funding for them in particular. We're here to showcase some great ideas with you and to introduce the next conversation or the next question. I want to tell you that the session is being recorded, and we will share the recording with you in the next few days, along with a note just to say that if you want to connect with any of the individuals on this panel, I'm happy to facilitate that for you. I'm happy to really answer any questions that you may have, so my information will be on that note for you. Beyond that, I'm going to now hand this over to my colleague Shashank to lead the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. A very, very warm welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and about to be good night in Tokyo, where I am right now. Thank you. It's such a privilege and pleasure to be here. I must say it's a bigger privilege and pleasure to be a friend for both Audrey and Kevin. And thank you so much for taking this bold step. I think, so first off, I feel encouraged that Kevin mentioned about the coffee. So that helped me get my tea on the screen as well. But after 650 sessions, finally, our time is here. So Kanish and Vahan, no pressure there, but just 650 sessions that I've already got done, and that's all that you both have to beat in some ways. As Kevin said, it's not a pitching session, but if you want to give a check, I can assure you on behalf of both Kanish, Vahan, and me, of course, we'll be very, very happy to take it. But with that, we'd like to get started. What the three of us would like to do is we'd like for this to be a conversation. The chat is on. Please do say or ask anything that comes to your mind during that, while we do have some time at the end for the conversation that we sort of would have had by then. But please feel free to keep mentioning anything that comes, and we'll try and weave it in as we go along. I'm supposedly the moderator, but hopefully, like I said, if it's going to be a conversation, then each of us will keep rolling along. I think there are a couple of questions. First, that Kevin set us up. Why does it take that many sessions over these many years for this to happen? And I think that's because we are all going to speak about it, but I'll just say in one line that people with disabilities globally are seen as beneficiaries, and they're not seen as any other. So I found to my complete horror that irrespective of your social or economic status, as a person with disability, for many things, you will get served only by charities. I've been a beneficiary myself. I lived in India. I grew up there. My schooling system, even though was private, sat on the foundation of resources being made available to it. Um, which it wasn't entitled to, but I was a beneficiary. But it never came across like that. In this case, it's the other way around. There are consumers, customers, citizens that are wanting to be served just as equals. There's nothing special, there's nothing different, there's nothing unique that they want. They just want to be treated as equals, but their time takes a long, long time to come. But fortunately, I think it's changing. And we're going to hear two incredible friends of mine speak about it. And before I get there, I just want to say, what is it that has brought the three of us together? We are from very different backgrounds. And Wag in particular is from Armenia. He's setting up a fund. And I think for Kanishk and me and Wagan, we are looking at the mirror image of it. In some form, we're looking for stuff that's coming out of Armenia. And what Wagan often says, going from a small country to large ones, like India, for example. For Kanishk and me, it's about products, services, platforms that work in the toughest markets. India, for example, Southeast Asia in general, very, very value conscious, right? And therefore, Kanishk and me believe that if we are able to make something work here, hopefully it can work in other places, subject to quality, etc., etc. I'm going to just stop with that and ask both of our colleagues to introduce themselves. But before that, if they just want to add a little bit color to, what is it that you think about that brought sort of the three of us who are looking at disability inclusion as a market, right? As a respectful market where there are consumers that are deeply underserved. Please do add that. Kanish, I'm going to start with you, and then, of course, Vagan, I'm going to come to you thereafter, and then I'll share a little bit about the fund that we are raising. But Kanish, why don't you get started, and I'll just quickly get the slides up for you.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Shashank, and thank you to Audrey and Kevan as well for having us all here. Specifically, I'm really excited to speak about this with this audience here. I think you set it up really well, Shashank, that I think the one thing that brings all three of us together is the fact that we don't look at this as something that's particularly niche or something that is particularly oriented towards charity or philanthropy. We do all come at it from a perspective of markets and commercial opportunity. And I think I'm here because I honestly believe that we're looking at one of the biggest untapped markets of our time. So, I mean, the broad numbers speak for themselves. There's almost 1.5 billion people who live with a disability. 90% of them are in emerging markets. A really large chunk of them, upwards of 250 million, are middle class consumers, right? More broadly. So that's a customer base that's huge. And it's the sad part is less than 1% of the global health and tech investments really targets this market and this customer segment. And don't really treat them as customers, as you said, treat them more like beneficiaries. And so for me, the result is a massive gap between the demand for these products as well as the distribution models that can actually drive reach amongst people. And so I think if you flip to the next slide, I'll come a little bit to what I do and the work that I've been doing with Disability Impact Partners and Seed Stars, who have set up this fund, the Assistive Tech Multiplier, which is ATX. And it's specifically looking to close this gap. So it's a $50 million venture fund. I would like to say, one of the few funds globally that is really focused on assistive tech innovation in emerging markets. The idea is that we will provide patient early stage capital as well as combined with venture building expertise to product companies, but also distribution companies. And I think that's one important thing to harp on as I introduce our sort of core ideas and thesis. We think there's a lot that can be done by just focusing on standard commercial distribution models, optimizing supply chains, and really bringing some very cool products and product innovators to meet with distributors in some of these large markets and really kind of flow their products out. So we really think that, from a market perspective, tackling that distribution challenge is going to be critical. Our strategy is really simple. It's on the slide. We really focus on product innovators that are providing radically affordable but high quality assistive technology products, and they are custom built, purpose built for emerging market countries. Most of the current, high quality products have just been designed with a Western market and a Western customer segment in mind. And second, we really invest in distribution models that are disruptive, that really focus on pushing the reach out from your standard, metropolises, and really looking at different models that are not particularly clinic driven, and low capital intensity to reach these customers. So the thing that I think is interesting is when you put those two forces together, the product side and then the distributors in these large markets, that really acts as a flywheel, because the product guys often don't know the markets, and then the distributors are always looking to increase their product lines. And so when you put those two together, and talk about it a little bit when I introduce a couple of portfolio companies, really, something quite magical and emphatic happens in terms of serving these customers. So that really acts as our flywheel for our fund. Some of the other details are there on the slide. I won't belabor them too much, but I think maybe with the time that's remaining for me here, I don't want to take up too much time. I'd like to spotlight a couple of the companies. So these are 4 companies that we already have in our portfolio. I'll talk about 2 of them. The one on the extreme right is Participant, which is a company that manufactures and sells low-cost, emerging market-first wheelchairs. The founder spent 20 years in a leading wheelchair nonprofit, and then I think his main insight when he tells the story to us is that no one wants a nonprofit wheelchair. The problem is that the only options available are nonprofit wheelchairs or wheelchair that cost somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 and requires a trip to the city and to a clinician who may not be there to really purchase and fit out. So he founded Participant to change that, and has now produced really high quality wheelchairs that are 50% lower in price than relative than alternatives, and has really sort of invested in building that out in developing markets. We invested when they were about 500,000 in revenue 2 years ago. This year they're going to be doing about 1.5 million, and they already have contracts in place that they know they'll be reaching at least $2.5 million next year. So that's like real revenue trajectory that we're looking at. And the other one is K2, or Care, which is the second one on the slide. This is a omni-channel distributor, which is really focusing on innovative ways to get products out beyond cities. And the founders are a perfect combination of one guy's a clinical genius, the other is a very hardcore business guy. And what's special to us is that their commitment to disrupting customer care from our point of view, the retail side, the part of the PMO value chain, prosthetics and orthotics value chain. We invested in K2 about 3 years ago, and over the past year, we've already had almost, I think, 3 inquiries from major product companies in the P&O space, global companies that are looking to expand their footprint in India. But of course, we want to grow the company before we sell. The cool thing in terms of talking about the synergy is that Participant and K2, as part of being in our portfolio, talk to each other. And K2 was able to actually open up a separate product line with Participant wheelchair products, which ended up being one of their sort of highest growing product lines over the last 12 to 18 months. So that's a real example of our thesis in work that I'm quite excited to share. But I'll pause there and hand it back to you.
Thanks so much, Ganesh. Wagner, I'd like to come to you, but before that, I just want to say that the work that Ethics and Kanishk have been doing together with the partners, I think you can see the alignment, even though the amount of capital is much lesser than it should be. All of us are raising a fund at this point in time, and I can't tell you how brutally difficult it is. I mean, I think clearly the macros are against us, but I also think that given the scale of opportunity and very viable, Karesh was talking very hard, real numbers. And in any other line of business, I think these would be seen as businesses that are going after consumers that people just simply haven't thought of. But I think the biases continue to be there. But we'll speak about that as we go along. Thank you so much, Kanesh. Bhavin, over to you. Just tell us a little bit about, what got you started. How do you think forces are coming together? And I'll just get your slides up.
Yeah, thanks a lot. First of all, really, I'm happy and excited to be here and be one of the speakers. And really huge thanks to Impact for Breakfast team for the great and important job they are doing, actually connecting people with the same vibe and the same values, which eventually can create a lot of impact. And yeah, the question is really great. Why I'm here actually? So I heard about assistive technology like 7 years ago when I was offered the position in UNDP to become an international impact investment advisor. And being a guy from the pure financial sector at that point, the private equity, I accept this as a kind of the thing which is more like charity kind. And eventually, when I started learning about that, I understand that this is a wow moment and really discovery for myself because all my professional life, actually, I did both. I was involved in a lot of social initiatives, including preparing a guide for people with disabilities, how to business, open around 50 businesses from scratch for people coming back from different countries, and a lot of things. That at the same time, in order to earn your living, you are doing some commercial job as a banker, as a private equity investment expert, etc. And then it appears that these two things can be together, and you can feel like double happy, let's say, and do something good, and also earn something, which allow actually to continue the work and allow the sustainability. And then when I start implementing different impact investment projects, I come across the assistive technology domain, which was strangely involved in the governance portfolio, and it's only a small part of the big governance project. And then I see that this is a big opportunity for businesses and for Armenia to position itself on the map as one of the centers of impact investment and assistive tech. And we start finding out how we can develop the domain. We approached WHO and we conducted the research and demand supply. And based on that, we understand that there is a big gap in the market, especially in the region where Armenia is located, when nobody is supporting actually the early stage impact startup, especially nobody knows about assistive technology and the huge opportunities this disability tech and assistive tech can offer to the market. And then we decided to actually bring together basically people from diaspora, people from financial and technical domains. And later on, we understand that this is not enough. If we bring together technical and financial people, we will have the same impact. So we need more people from social domains like education, health, assistive tech, etc., in order to come together and to decide what to do. And considering what we are talking about early stage, the ventures in early stage, they need more guidance, more access to the market, network, and expertise rather than just capital injections. And we actually came to our potential investors with the same ask. We found those experts which really want to be committed, not only by their capital, but also with their time and expertise. And we start gathering the commitments of both, and then we start investing both. And it actually brings some fruits already. If we go to the next slide, I would like just to say a few words for those who don't know. Armenia is currently really witnessing a very rapidly developing tech ecosystem. We already have several unicorns, but at the same time, still those social challenges are not met. And there is a big opportunity to apply those technical solutions and technological solutions to solve those social problems. If we go to the next slide, I just want to say, but most of our investors, they really are committed. And here we become a kind of a bridge because what we actually want to do, we are in the middle of philanthropy and commercial investments. And then those people which want to do the shift from both sides, as a first step, they may decide to join ATIF because it's a kind of learning by investing modality when you are putting your ticket and we try to educate each other. And it comes out, but currently I just calculated, it comes to my mind yesterday, but 30% of our investors, they are currently running some NGOs or previously they was involved in international organizations or NGOs. So all of them can understand, but there is a good time to shift because previously, like 7 years ago, it was really hard to talk about like finding really good investments and blended finance investment for assistive tech because everyone considered this as a social, something which is pure social. But the current stage of AI and machine learning, we can solve those problems in a better and efficient way. So here, being in Armenia, of course, Armenia is a small country, but we have all the resources to pilot. And the results of WHO also prove this. But all the problems exist in Armenia at the same kind of distribution exist in the world. So it gives us an idea and chance, but whatever we can test here, of course, with the involvement of international partners, we can rather all scale up. That's why we put on our table a global goals to reach out more than 10 million people with disability to provide them to access to digital and physical infrastructures, to access people in more than like 5 countries, and also pursue some free directions of accessibility and application of assistive tech in healthcare, education, and in public services. So we are pursuing those early stage startups which already have some MVP, and we try to shape it for the next stage. We may stay with them or we may exit whenever they are ready to scale up. If we go to the next slide, I will love to bring an example of Salute AI, which is a solution for deaf people. It's a communication tool based on AI and machine learning with actually speech to gesture and gesture to speech. But on top of that, we found out during the work with them, the hands-on work, but there is a need of adaptation of websites and there is a standard. So there are a couple of services arrived from the international demand, which is a AAA adaptation in different languages, considering what, there are like 500 million people with this disability and only 20,000 translators. And out of them, only 12% they are able to speak 2 gesture languages because gesture languages are different. So there is also communication gap between deaf communities in different countries. And also this is the key there to learn something and to implement and to work and to find a good work, because most of the deaf people in Armenia, at least, they are doing some service which is not in line with their mental abilities. And now we already have integrated American Sign Language, Korean, German, French, Armenian, and we start working on an Indian one with the support of Shaosheng because we already have some synergies in working with each other. And now we're trying to scale it up. And, in different countries is different, but we also use our experience of this startup to work with American Deaf Association for 2 years. And as my colleague Kanishka mentioned, there is some synergy between different startups and different initiatives. And I would like to bring an example how the solution initiated in Armenia can support it. If you go to other slide, you can see the one global initiative which targeted to educate kids in order to be aware of different negative effects on cybersecurity through the digital education, and we are supporting this project also to be launched in Armenia. And what we did, we offered them also to make this available for deaf kids with applying the Salute AI solution. And there are a lot of other synergies. We are now looking, we have an idea, we call it in school. And we try to make a model of an inclusive school using Salute AI, another solution for deaf people, for kids with disabilities, because these are the two domains we are really emotionally very attached. But we see a lot of big markets here, because if we talk about the family members of people with disabilities and their take cares of them, it's already calculated as an $80 trillion market, which is more than like China or India. And here it's called like purple dollar market or purple market. And we need to use more of such kind of things in order to, show this. We shouldn't convince, but we show that there is an opportunity here. And I'll stop here and will, with pleasure, continue the conversation with my colleagues and attendees.
Thank you, Wagner. Lots of very interesting points. I think I'm going to certainly use double happiness. That sounds way better than double bottom line. So that's a quick takeaway for me right away from there. I think one of the things that stood out for me, as it always does in any of our conversations, Wagner, is how you talked about the demand aspect. And of course, in our experience, all of us have seen that not only is the demand underestimated by everybody in the space, sometimes users themselves don't have a complete understanding of what their demand is, simply because they just don't have access to the kind of products that they need. And you'll be very surprised. I was talking to somebody, and Kanesh, you're spot on when you talked about nobody wants an NGO product in some form, somebody who's a prosthetic. And this is somebody who's about 32 years of age and has told me that he's never used a prosthetic till he was 18 or 19, which was completely fit for his leg. Because what would happen is in low resource settings, the family or the organization encourages you to buy something which is slightly larger than what you need today because it will last you longer. So you start off with something that's a little bit larger, and then just for a little while it's okay. And then when you're growing up, it starts to become smaller. Till then, it's time for you to get. And there's no conversation because there are only X number of suppliers that you can go to. And what they're saying is, at least we're able to get you this. So in many ways, I think the understanding of demand is really very, very weak because even the users haven't sort of been able to articulate because they've not had choice, right? I think this lack of choice really starts off. No doubt that there's immense need for the support that startups require, right, across sectors, and whether it's amongst each other or across countries, as Wagner and we are hoping that something will happen. I'll just have a small slide to present. Kanishk and Wagner are good friends, but they're also very unfair because after what they present, I'm wondering what can I say that can make us look good. But if you're sold by what they said, don't worry about it. I'm just their country cousin, so we're going to be just fine. But I have just a little slide to tell you what we're thinking about as we're building our fund. I'm a co-founder and general partner at Anisa Venture Capital. Basically, our aim is to use catalytic capital to demonstrate that large social and economic outcomes are possible in disability inclusion. We have a track record. I'm not going to read up everything, but we have a track record of impact investing at Gregos Ventures for over 15, 17 years. We've been very fortunate to have worked with very high quality entrepreneurs. And I think that's something that's outstanding for the three of us as we speak here, which is we have access to entrepreneurs. Well, we may be smart or otherwise, but there are lots of other investors who are not looking at these entrepreneurs, right? So we start off at a level that's higher. The second thing is, unlike, let's say, in India, where somebody might want to do delivery tech or food tech or cloud kitchen or something because it's the flavor of the day for investors, that doesn't happen for anybody like us. all the entrepreneurs that we worked with over the years have only chosen to do this because they want to do this, right? They're significantly limited, and if I can say impaired, for the absence of capital. But they're doing this because they want to do this. And I think as an investor, that then takes the box whether this is the kind of entrepreneur that you want to work with to deliver economic outcomes. I think if we assist them appropriately, I think we would be doing a good job. One of the things there is to be able to convince our entrepreneur itself about the scale of opportunity. While they know it, and they usually tell us these very large numbers. I'm so glad that Vagan said it, and he saved me the incredible desire that I have of saying $8 trillion once it came up on the return on disability, right? I mean, I'm looking for the largest number there is ever to put out. But I can even say for myself that if you were to break it down, then there are all sorts of questions and thoughts that there are. And when you start chasing it, right? And that's where I want to come to the way that we are approaching this opportunity. Because we've been investors for a decade and a half. We've been very fortunate that the kind of firms that we have backed in the past have managed to look at a trade sale. They've come from markets like Bangladesh that aren't seen as classical generators of large outcomes, both social and economic, on the for-profit side. So I think we've been very, very fortunate to have that experience behind us. Also, how the idea about the consumer changes. I've seen how poor women were just considered as poor women till they became credible borrowers thanks to microfinance. Which then brings me to the final point. So while this entire idea about it being a very large, very deeply underserved market is very, very valid, I think it's very important to remember that we might ourselves contribute to the lack of choice, right? So as investors, we have to be very, very mindful that we sort of put formal systems in place. Because if we are going to be able to back, so I guess between the three of us, we probably end up backing 35, 40 companies, maybe 50 tops, right? Definitely no more than that. If you look at 50 companies, we're doing Asia as is Kanishk, and then Vagan is doing Europe and some parts of Asia. These companies will be ahead of everybody in terms of the capital that they have, and others will not have that capital, and therefore they will have more runway. They'll have the chances to make all sorts of experiments that others can't, which is what we have set out to do. But does that put the companies that we back in a position that leads to lack of choice and therefore some unintended consequences? I think that's very, very important to remember. It's not on the slide because I didn't think of it at that point in time. And while Kevin did say it's not a pitch, we're so used to talking about what the nice stuff is out there. But I think it's very important that we bring up these issues that we will need to be working with. I just realized that the slide I was hoping to share has not been shared. Can you see a slide by any chance? I'm not very sure. You can? Okay, sorry. Yeah. So I'm just going to stop. I know we're at about 35 minutes into the conversation. So we believe that there's a very large market. There are outdated ideas. These ideas need to be challenged for consumers, for distributors. And I'm so glad that Karesh mentioned about that very important piece, because the number of times that we've seen something which looks interesting but doesn't get to enough number of people is just insane. I think the charity lens is a real problem. People don't realize that the wallet of the family travels with the wallet of the individual, right? So these are not just the individual themselves, but their entire family's wallet, whether it's in travel, consumer products, or whatever, is likely to travel with them. I think the timing is great for all of us. I think technology has made it so much easier to be able to now stop or not having to incur as much cost in both distribution and prototyping, that it makes it easier. Also, I think regulation, social change, etc. And the fact that we are having this conversation, I think, is a reflection of that. That's pretty much what we talked about. What I'd like to say about our work. And I just want to open up for a couple of conversations between the three of us. Let me just stop. Okay. Are we on full screen now? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to just go back to the same routine that we took earlier, Kanish, that I'm going to probably try and ask you a couple of questions to get us started, right? So there are questions like, is there pipeline, right? Is there capacity, etc. And what happens to grants, for example? So are you saying that now that there are VCs in this space, we don't need grants anymore, and it's just very straightforward commercial capital that has to sort of take charge of this? So a little bit about that aspect, and then about the quality of pipeline. Absorptive capacity is a phrase that gets thrown at the three of us all the time. What's your sense about that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Shashank. I think let me start with the product and pipeline question, and then I'll touch upon the funnel question as well. So look, I'm by no means an expert in this space, but I think the one thing that's been super interesting that I've learned in our work across emerging markets is that the real assistive tech opportunity sits in the middle of the market, not really in the extremes. And like what do I mean by that? So if you look at the landscape of AT products today, assistive technology across mobility, across optics, across hearing, different kinds of disabilities, there's basically two dominant options that are out there. One at the sort of the extreme high end, which is largely products that have been developed in the West, keeping in mind a Western user and a Western context, right? Usually excellent quality, but priced completely out of reach for most people in the emerging markets that we're talking about. And then at the other end, you have the low cost options, the free subsidized things, usually from charities, from government, large government programs. And while this allows perhaps the most needy to get these products, the products themselves are basic, right? They're not, they're fragile. They really can't support the daily life needs that they have, heavy work requirements. So what's really missing in some ways is everything in middle. What I do want to point out, I know we said, like not to bring up too many large numbers, but I'd be criminal if not saying that this missing middle is almost 300 million people in like 5 or 6 large countries, right? And and why this is exciting or interesting is because these are middle class consumers, right? Forget if you put the disability side aside for a minute, these are effectively the group at a global level that pretty much everyone has recognized, right? If you think about India, Mexico, Indonesia, like this is the economic engine that will really drive global growth over the next 30 to 40 years, right? Like that middle class. And we're talking about conservatively addressing 15% of that. So to us, again, I can't reiterate enough, like this is not a niche thing. This is not charity. This is just like an untapped customer segment. I think the good news from an innovation product perspective is that as you said, I think that's the most exciting and I think fun thing in the work that we've done, all three of us, is just having access to such cool entrepreneurs, who are really looking to come at it from like a problem solution kind of frame of mind. And what they've done is really recognize this missing need, this middle class demand gap. And, in a way, the way I think about it is like these product innovators are kind of doing for assistive technology what someone like a OnePlus did for the mobile phone industry. So for those who are unfamiliar, OnePlus is this large Chinese manufacturer of handsets, owned by the same group that owns Oppo, Vivo. I think they did like something close to 10 billion in sales in India just last year, in India alone. And what they did was they entered a market which is very dominated by high-end premium mobile phone handset manufacturers with very, very high-priced devices. And so their strategy was really simple. They wanted to deliver the near premium performance. They were very clear that it's not going to be your iPhone, but it's not going to be that much worse. And that design at a fraction of the cost. And so it's really sort of custom built specifically for that, value conscious customer and user that you were talking about, right? And from an assistive technology perspective, that's the same user that we're going after. So they didn't retrofit low end phones or chase like the cheapest models. They actually did the design, all, they revolutionized. They built it for this customer from the ground up. And that is what the same pattern that we're seeing in assistive technology, particularly in segments like mobility, where the innovators are not interested in just doing like a light version of a product that already exists, but they're kind of building from the ground up. And as a result, it also starts to address some of the things that you very rightfully mentioned, which is like it's giving users an understanding of, oh, okay, this is what I do need, right? Not the other stuff that's available to me. So I think that this is super exciting. We're seeing socket technologies that are like cutting clinic time, 10x. We're seeing we're seeing hybrid models of distribution, which are pushing again reach out and reducing the dependence on clinicians and trained professionals, which again really helps in these emerging markets. So I think to me, these are not like incremental improvements. They're just like a new generation of investable assistive technology med tech companies, and they have strong unit economics. They have scalability, and really sort of catering to that mass market middle class segment, which I think is poised for growth. And I think that's at least something that we can all. So that's on the product side. I'll give you my quick thoughts on the fund. I know I've taken up a bunch of airspace, but I think on the funder side, the short answer is no. It's not that the grants are not needed. I think one of the, again, the great things that we've seen over the past few years is that as a shift is that the early stage pipeline, which has supported these product innovations that I'm talking about, that's really coming from the grant side, right? Like, so again, if you look at the market, we kind of see two extremes. You have the grant funded side, which has seen a lot of momentum, the catalytic capital going in to labs, to think tanks, to accelerators. And that's really provided quite a pipeline of products coming through. They're excellent at spotting these early innovators. They're providing that first check anywhere between $50,000 to $250,000. And then at the other end, you have your conventional, investors who, once you get to stage 2, stage 3, Series A, Series B, they're obviously willing to kind of, drop in and do that. I think the critical piece is that middle, right? So when an innovation extends from the pilot stage, what do you do then? And I think that's where money is needed. That's where ATX is focused on the ones that typically write the $500,000 to $2 million checks that really give the company the runway to grow, the time to grow into then opportunities that more sort of pure play commercially minded investors can come through and pick up. So I think that the challenge for the funding landscape is truly that unless you fill that gap, you have many excellent companies that are just getting stuck at that inflection point. And they have strong products, they have early adoption, but they really need the capital. So I think that's where the focus needs to be. And even there, I think there are a lot of opportunities for blended capital where you can combine, more catalytic sources like PRIs with more commercial or impact investments to ensure that, there are early risk takers, but then that there are opportunities for investors down the line as well. So yeah, I would say like the common theme for me across both the product and the funding landscape side is that missing middle point. And I think if both they constitute, at least in our minds, a big opportunity.
Thank you, Karesh. I think you covered a pretty wide range, and I think the amount of capital that is really needed is too tiny, whether it's in grants. A lot of people talk about as if grant money is a whole lot, but you'll be surprised at how little grant money really goes, particularly when you think about 15% of humanity, uh, getting covered in the segment. Vagan, I'm going to come to you quickly to ask you to tell us a little bit about the demographics, the consumers, or whatever. I think Kanishka has already talked a lot about the 15%, the breakdown, where they sit, etc. Do you like to cover a little bit about aging population? Is there something around digital financing? Is there an adjacency? Is there something around the insurance market that one should be thinking about? Kanishka, when you talked about how products that in 80 are sort of very similar to where they are. I found often that when I'm telling somebody about a product, he says, that's a healthcare product, right? So it's somehow not a disability product, right? It's just always about something else that it is, and not the way that we are looking at it. And I'm fine. I mean, any which way it can get more capital and can grow, I think is good for us. But yeah, Wagner, about adjacencies, is how does that work? Who benefits when places become accessible to everybody?
Yeah, actually, when we talk about assistive technology, which is currently provided basically by the governments, people think about people with disabilities, but we should include also kids and aging populations, because 1 of 10 in the world, they need assistive tech. And when we did this research, we find out that a lot of people don't even imagine what whatever you use to see your glasses, etc., is also assistive technology. It depends on it low tech, middle tech, or high tech. And more people, unfortunately, because of the situation in the world, because of these wars, etc., more and more people need this assistive technology. Also because of the complications of such diseases, chronic diseases as, for example, diabetes. A lot of people need more and more assistive technologies. And also this affects the general capacities of the governments and countries in order to create a GDP, which the loss is around from 5 to 7%. And that's why this demand initially came from the government side. They want to spend less money and to have more satisfied and happy people in their countries. So, and in order to pick this up, I guess the private sector should remember, and all of us, that a lot of solutions which initially was designed for people with disabilities, such as touch screen, I don't know, the same Siri, which is used by Apple, and automatic doors. A lot of things were initially designed for people with disabilities, but it became a trigger to use this by other people. Even now, when we work with algorithms to adapt the usual grammar to the grammar understandable by deaf, we understand that we're also looking for this solution, because a lot of legal documents, they are unreadable, and you have a headache when you start trying to understand what is the core meaning of these long documents. And also, I think what there is two way of finding out these companies. One is to start from scratch, actually, to support these early stage startups to go and to meet unmet demand. From other sides, a lot of companies, they already are satisfying partially this demand. And if you add another feature on the existing solution, you can capture a bigger market. So here we can approach those startups and tech companies which already have some solution. For example, in Armenia, we have a company which is dealing with the noise detection and clearing the noise. So it could apply for people with hearing problems. And also, I would like to come back to what you say about the people which are really a bit not ready even to use the solutions, because there are some psychological issues. And this is one of the dimensions of assistive tech. So hearing problems, vision problems, mobility problems, cognitive problems. So all this is coming in the one bundle. And we need to blend not only money, but also expertise. And from our own experience, when we think about such an impression as nothing about us without us, this is clear definition how to put the customer in the middle, how to put all the verification with the final beneficiaries, which eventually improve the quality of your product. And also, we need to actually continue the work started with NGOs and governments because they are more project-based. And when the venture fund is involved, you are continuing the project. You put not only your $1 near the dollar of development institution of the government, but you put all your life to continue and push this forward whenever the project is ended. This is another important thing where this project-based initiatives, they don't have a long life. And also the market is changing. As you said, it comes out, but the number of people which need assistive technology is growing. And the new statistics is coming and the new technology is coming. And you need to be aware of this. And who else rather than the private sector is more dynamically like looking at this and keep the fingers on the pulse. And yeah, this is actually important, and I want to say it again, but we need to blend existing opportunities from private and public sector to bring more ready-made solutions into this domain and show them that you're already there, and also to use this, not only the grant money, but the network, the support, and bring this and blend all this together in order to get the best of each in the domain of impact investment, and particularly the assistive technologies.
Thank you, Juan. Well, time flies. We've finished only about 30 to 40% of what the three of us were hoping to discuss. And therefore, we are going to extend this conversation by another 4 hours. No, Kevin's about to throw me out for having said that. We're not going to do that. We'll let you get back to work. I just want to tell you that our emails are in our names, so you can reach out to one of us. Otherwise, Kevin is always more than gracious to be able to connect you with one of us should you want. Kevin, I'm going to come to you to request you to sort of put this all together, but just a couple of points that I was hoping to make a mention of is I think how there's this the government piece, right? And then particularly AT scale, I think is doing a lot of work around that must be mentioned, right? Because that capacity development is very, very important because they have a reach and the scale and size that pretty much nobody else has. So I think that's a very important thing. In India, I think in particular, the role of philanthropy and CSR is significantly over-considered, I think. It's because the amount of capital that they have is very large, but still nothing compared to what the need is in some form. I also want to share that in ODA, so, for example, when we talk about is there enough capital, whether in form of grants or whatever else, you'll be surprised. I was horrified to hear this, that it is only about 4 or 5 years ago that in the international assistance, they started capturing disability inclusion by itself as a tag so that you could report on it. And before that, it would just be that, oh, this project. So, for example, a metro rail project was intended to improve accessibility for people with disabilities. Whether it did so, whether the stations are accessible or whatever else is something that, could have been, may not have been, etc. But that was just the tag. So I think the market building effort is required at so many different forms that it's difficult for us to be able to think about some of those. And I think it's always nice to leave people with more questions than answers, I think. Hopefully, we have been able to do that in this call. And before I hand it over to Kevin, I want to express on behalf of Kanishk and Wagin and me, very sincere thanks to Kevin for welcoming us and giving us this platform. And to the magician that I always say, Audrey is, and she gets so many things happening that it's an amazement for most of us. And so thank you to both of you. But Kevin, over to you. We have another 2 minutes, and I'll really request you to put it all together, and then we can close.
Thank you very much, Shashank. I would say we have a few more minutes, and it would be lovely to entertain some audience questions. There are some in the chat. Any that particularly speak to you, please call them out. It seems like Sabina has a raised hand, so we have approximately 12, 14 more minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Sabina, please go ahead.
Yeah, I had two questions or two clarifications to ask you. First of all, thank you for the amazing presentation. It's very, very informative and useful. The first thing I want to clarify is when you are referring to disabilities, I'm assuming you're referring only to physical disabilities and not invisible disabilities as well, correct? I'm just asking
No.
the scope of your venture.
In my case, we are focused at least on invisible disabilities as much. We see a very substantial and urgent need, particularly in the areas of mental health. But fortunately, that's been getting a very large amount of capital in some form, unfortunately, for unintended consequences, etc. I think Vivek has a question about mental health startups, and there are a ton of them out there, Vivek, both in India, but I think some of them globally doing some very, very good work. I also think that neurodivergence, in particular learning disabilities, Sabina, are significantly underestimated. And I think we're still learning. So I think one of the challenges for invisible disabilities is that we still don't recognize them. I didn't want to speak too much because I thought since we are just sticking to the more visible and physical disabilities, but I think there are rare conditions, for example, and I was quite surprised that a rare condition is classified simply because nobody's done any research about it, right? And how does that make it rare? Don't ask me, but this is what a doctor told me. And I think there's a very substantial amount of work required to be done there because comorbidity, for example, is a huge challenge. In general, in disability, comorbidity levels are higher, particularly for mental health. So that's a very important one to think about. I will, but yeah, Kanishk and Bhavin, I'll let you talk a little bit about your funds.
I think in the intro, I think Sabina also had another follow-up to that. But yes, Sabina, I think even for us, we obviously have some prioritization in terms of what we want to tackle first. But as such, I think, we're not excluding mental health related disabilities or neurological disabilities that Shashank was talking about.
Okay, thank you. And the second clarification I had was when you're measuring impact, are you looking at the impact of livelihoods that get created or financial independence that people can achieve through this AT intervention? Is that something you're looking at?
Kanishk, you want to take that first?
Yeah, I can reply. Actually,
Yeah,
we are using internationally accepted IMP, Impact Management Project, which actually cover 5-dimensional impact, including the risks, who contribution, who will be impacted, how will be impacted, and based on the startup structure. So we are actually setting those impact KPIs, and if, for example, I don't know, the financial standing of a family is within this impact KPIs, we follow it, we measure it, try to manage it. With my experience, we more did it with social impact bonds when we are targeting some measurable social environmental impact and when you propose a business model. But yes, I would conclude, and we use special methodology in order to be understandable from the market side, from the community, and internally. We use this IMP for that reason.
Yeah, and I
Sabina,
think from our side,
sorry.
go ahead,
Please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think again, when I go back to the whole point around like the middle class segment, I think that the whole livelihoods, employment, the productive use idea is, I think, the most compelling, in some ways, impact, at least, for an audience of investors. I think that the whole thesis there is that, and it speaks to itself, right? Like, I don't think there's much need to talk about the actual impact that access to an assistive technology provides the user. I think in enabling education, in enabling jobs, in enabling different kinds of livelihoods. I think that's really where we think, the economic power of access to assistive technology, especially for middle class segments, can really enable. I think there are definitely studies out there, and I think Shashank, you were referring to some of them, where they've estimated the potential economic value, and it's like on a really high magnitude, like over the course of a child's lifetime, access to education and employment can increase on average income by like $150,000. So, those are certainly things that we look at and we try to measure in the work that we do.
Okay. I'm going to ruffle some feathers here, and that is to challenge ourselves to think about the instrumentality of the work that we've picked. So is this a question that I would have for Volkswagen, for example, right? Or I don't know, it's the first name that just came up, or whatever else. As investors, we're extremely careful and conscious that we do not ask for any information from our portfolio companies unless we can provide them the capital to go out and get it, right? What I think a lot of people don't realize is that um, for most consumers, particularly customers, this kind of stuff can be quite irritating to deal with. Every hotel I stay with, every airline, every platform sends me tons of questionnaires. I will regretfully say I don't fill up most of them. I don't particularly like the idea of receiving phone calls asking me how your experience was, or this, that, or whatever. So I think, customers vote with their wallet. That's really the key point as far as we are concerned. I think entrepreneurs do tell very clearly what is it that their product does. And then I want to also say that there is the tendency in all of us to say that our work has this incredible impact that goes through multiple generations and whatever else. Can I claim credit for it? Is a question that I always ask myself, right? Particularly as providers of capital. And whether the entrepreneur can do that, I don't know where I stand on that. So I'm a little iffy, but my first point is always that if I'm going to ask anybody for any information, other than the operating information which is promised to me in the share purchase agreement, and in our SPA, NSHA, etc., we do not ask for any information other than operating information. So from that, we have to be able to make sense of what we set out to do, because that's the tool that we picked up. And then that brings me to the point that Jaswinder, or the question that Jaswinder had, which I don't think we got around to answering, which is that in the end, Jaswinder, all the costs or whatever else have to be borne by the customer eventually. What happens is, when you're starting off, there is, of course, that capital that you can put together, which differs. And therefore, you have what else, deferred costs that over a period of time you can make do as a business. But in the end, over a reasonable period of time, businesses must be able to get the money that they put to work. If it's going to be in the nature of equity and debt, then it must be compensated for it suitably. And therefore, viable products and services are those which make it worth the while of consumers or customers to be able to pay for them. Though I do recognize that when most services, products, or platforms are being put together, they may not be viable. But to get to viability is why it needs people like us to be able to put both the risk and the amount of money that it takes to be able to get there. Slightly longer conversation required, but I'll just stop, and I hope sort of answers the question that you had.
Shashank, I'm just going to jump in and ruffle
Please.
feathers again, but just, does isolating causality matter when you're an impact investor? Do we have to ensure that we know that our funding stream necessarily results in X output or Y outcome? Especially if there's a club of investors working together, does it matter?
Well, I think certainly do, because, and particularly when you say the second piece, Audrey, because now you suddenly brought in the fiduciary responsibility that I have, right? So this isn't touchy-feely good stuff. Now, if you're putting money and you're saying, Shashank, I expect this, now I'm suddenly responsible for that, right? And I think the disservice that I could do is not seek clarification or come to common agreement and just smile about it. But I think it's very important to be aligned, and the misalignment results often from not having discussed it. But you have something going on in your head that I want to listen to.
No, I mean, certainly the output. It's
Yeah.
important. I mean, you're promising to deliver a certain return. I think we
Yes.
should get to Jaswin's question about who pays. You already mentioned that. If that return is assured, and you have an impact metric that you're also reporting on, do you have to be, ensuring that it's only on the back of your injection of capital or your financing scheme or whatever? I would argue not necessarily, as long as the negative externality is being reduced in some measurable way, where you're clear on baseline and what's changed as a result.
Also, I think already the tendency for anybody who's managing money to say that this has much more impact than it really does. Because at the end of the day, the sun in our solar system is the entrepreneur, right? And not the financier or whoever puts capital on the table. So capital does just only one thing, but there's obviously labor, enterprise, and other things. And therefore, I think we should be very, very mindful. But yes, that we're able to isolate the negative externality, I think that's quite crucial that we must have. But Vagan and Kanishk, if you have something, it's very, very interesting point. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, actually, what I love in this game, when I start talking business with those who are in development sector, I start talking like impact with those who are in business sector, and try to convince them that we are talking the same. So if you have enough, let's say, beneficiaries, they are customers as well. So if you can measure the number of deaf or blind people you supported, this is one layer of impact you can measure. The next layer can be GDP, whatever their the value they can bring, the psychological effect, etc. But in our case, we try to start what I call bread and cheese in Armenia. So you shouldn't talk about this very super complicated things, but at least you should start this conversation from the beginning. We did it in the with the term sheet. We initially agreed the term sheet before investing. And within our model, we have this privilege to start investing the time until we are ready to invest the money. And even if we are not ready to invest the money, we at least supported some impact initiative. And at this stage, we'll try to understand how we will continue the work. Whenever we were going to measure the financial or impact return. So we have some gap period for that. And this is the thing you should done. And again, what I love to transform, I don't know, the business concepts into impact concepts and impact concepts into the business concept, feeling like I'm kind of a translator in the middle and connector. And the thing is, when you start talking about impact with the complicated way we are using this IMP, etc., it may, from the initial conversation, it will say that we don't have another layer, we don't want another layer of expenses, costs, and headaches. But when you try to embed it in the business model, this become part of the business model. You are not reporting at the end. You are not doing the thing and then sitting and start imagining what kind of impact we can report. So this is the way. When the same is with ESG. If the team or a company is not ready to accept this, it will become another layer of headache, another layer of internal, problems and things to implement this. So I guess this is the important thing, to start doing that like chunk by chunk, and also convince yourself and others that this is part of the business. This is part of the business what we select to be in.
Maybe I'll come in here with a 30-second. I think since we're all ruffling feathers on this question, I'll ruffle some. I think in our entire fundraising process, I think the investors that have raised the impact question the least are the impact investors, and the ones who are supposed to provide catalytic capital. I think they're the ones who are the most actually focused on what is the return you're going to give us from a financial perspective. So, look, I think that we're talking about as you said, Shashank, right? Like, we've talked about, we're talking about 15% of the population conservatively. And to me, the question of impact, like, is like, it's very much from a user perspective, right? Like, if you are visually impaired, there's like, and you have access to the right kind of assistive technology, I don't think there's a huge and pressing need to estimate in a mathematical way, like what is the exact benefit of that, right? Like, there is clear impact, there is clear benefit. I think we should settle that question kind of like once and for all. And I do think that, wherever there are opportunities to have like common, consistent frameworks that actually make the lives of our companies easier, where they're not basically developing an entire monitoring and evaluation team and running randomized controlled trials to track impact, right? Shared services for impact monitoring and all that, those kinds of things can be hugely helpful to our entrepreneurs. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think the biggest questions that we fielded from in our rounds of fundraising is not really about the impact. It's mostly about like, am I going to get the returns that I'm looking for, the financial returns.
Yeah, thanks, Kiran. Vivek, to your point, I think LPs are rightfully looking for whatever returns that they're looking for. I think it's very important that there's an alignment. As Kanish said, it sounds very nice for us as people who are raising money to say that when in the first 3 minutes of any conversation, they'll tell you what they're looking for. It's not like you have to search for it. It just comes at you right away. I just think that what we've got going for us as asset managers is the fact that we're in a very, very large market, right? The number of users is very, very large. Without the adjacencies, like Vagan said, I think there's very poor understanding of how environments that are accessible are good for everybody, right? And we obviously cannot be talking about that too much, because then it starts, like Vagan was saying, you want to stick with bread and cheese, otherwise it makes it difficult for people to comprehend. But I think that is a very, very important part as well. We've been doing impact investing for a decade and a half. I can tell you that it's really about separating the impact and the investing piece and not trying to negotiate both of them together. So first, you understand. So for us, we are very clear that we are a performance-oriented fund in the space of impact. So for example, if somebody wants to sell Louis Vuitton bags, then we're not those people who can back that for whatever reason, right? Once you've got the impact that this is the kind of place that I want to be in, then we ask somebody to not bring that up on the Excel sheet. The customer doesn't have the ability to pay. That's great. The simple difference between affordability and liquidity, for example, right? If there's one thing that could really move the disability market, I think is just that. If we could bring in the kind of liquidity that's available in the form of easy access to debt financing. And every month I get a credit card statement. It is just bizarre how anything over $10 or $12, I think, I can click and it can get paid over 3 to 6 months. What kind of a life do you have where you're borrowing for whatever, that kind of money or whatever, but it's available to somebody like me. It's not available if I wanted to buy a wheelchair, right? I can buy all kinds of rubbish on all kinds of things and get access to that, right? Those are structural issues that we want our entrepreneurs to be able to think about, right? So it's not just saying that the pricing is the challenge or whatever, right? But you can always fix that with something else, and servicing and whatever else. So I think once you are, if at least I can say for ourselves, if you're able to separate the impact conversation from the execution conversation, I think you're able to see where the entrepreneur stands on that, or whatever thoughts that they have. Also, Vivek, I can say that, we've claimed that we always knew we were backing, incredible companies, but honestly, till the returns come, you don't know which way it's going to go, right? So in the end, like and in that sense, we are very classical early stage VC investors. There's nothing unique except that we're in a market that's not often understood. If I was telling you about a market that made phones or whatever, maybe there's a lot of other comps to go along with that, but that won't happen. And I think we may be running over time. And Kevin, as you can see, I'm so fond of my own voice that you will need to rein me in soon.
Shashank, I'm fond of all your voices. What is very obvious to me is my expertise is outside of this space. And in each one of these grateful conversations, I've been here as a simple human eating bread and cheese with each of you. Thank you for the knowledge and awareness you've brought to me. And I think you've brought a huge market segment out of the shadows for me. I'm most grateful for everything that I've learned in these conversations, and really happy to promote this as part of Impact for Breakfast. And again, we have recorded this session. I will follow up with all of the registrants with a recording of the session, and so very happy to connect any of you with the speakers on this panel and see how we can, make greater strides in this untapped market. I thank you all. Really grateful to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Grateful for
everyone.
your time.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Audrey.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
Ganesh.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Good luck. Have a good day.